What's up, guys? So today we're talking about the 315 bench press and how you guys can get there as fast as possible if it's in the sights or if it's one of your goals, and a little experience from me and the best tips that got me there after benching 225. Took me around 2 years to get to 315 naturally. So this is all the tips that got me there, and I hope you guys can probably learn some of the stuff that I'm telling you so you can incorporate it into your workouts when you try and hit this goal of 315 on bench. So the first tip that I have for you guys is having a strong back and doing back exercises to strengthen your bench, because your back is one of the most important things when stabilizing the bench, especially on heavy weights. So you'll find yourself not being able to hold the weight as much. Maybe you're able to push it up, but when you go down, you're not really controlling it. And that's because you just have a weak back. And if you build up a stronger back, you'll be able to control the weight a lot better when you bring it down. And then consequentially, since you have a stronger back and stabilizing it, you won't have any wobble or anything when you start pushing it up. So one of the things I emphasized a lot when I started on this journey, I guess, was to really take training back seriously, because if that helped, I knew that my bench would get better because I would be more stable. And in fact, you'll notice that if you have a very strong back, you will never have a problem lowering the weight. It'll always be a problem of pushing the weight back up because it'll be your chest. But for some people, they have a problem of lowering the weight, but then pushing it up is easy. So I think it's just way better to have way more control when you're bringing it on the way down. It looks better and it feels better on yourself, and you have a lot less chance of injury. So that's kind of why I train back a lot more, just in order to have a more stable bench, right? So that's one of the first things that I did that I saw increased my level of stability in bench a lot, and helped me, do harder rep ranges and everything when training. So the second thing that I did was, obviously, the need for a spotter as you continue going up in weight is almost essential. I was lucky enough to have someone that I worked out with to help me along the way no matter what. So having a spotter is very, very critical, especially because, when you go into the gym alone, you don't really, maybe sometimes you don't want to, always ask for a spotter because you feel like, you feel bad for the other people just having to, help you out. But once in a while it's fine, but I suggest really just to get someone to go with you, and then when you do bench, you can have someone else that spots you, because you're not going to push yourself harder than if you don't know how to fail, right? So if you're scared of failing on the bench press because you don't want to get buried in front of everyone and have someone pick the weight up for you, you need a spotter. And as you get better and better in the weights, closer to 315, what I did a lot of was slow eccentrics. And what that is pretty much only lowering the weight down as slow as possible, and then having your partner just pull it back up, So it was quite useful in that sense, because you didn't need to worry about the way up because your partner had it. So, and at the same time, you were able to push past failure, and that was something that was quite good. So second thing, like I said, heavy eccentrics, and grab yourself a spotter, because once you have a spotter, you'll be way more comfortable hitting heavier weights, not worrying about, what's going to happen, and if I don't make it, So that's the second most important tip that helped me get there. Some of these tips can carry over to the other stuff that I talked about when it comes to the 500 squat or the 600 deadlift, like this whole thing of variations with the squat and the variation with the deadlift. Same thing with the variation of the bench. Pause bench helped me tremendously because it really slowed down the movements. Sure, it made it 10 times harder. If you're bouncing the bar off your chest, you're gonna be able to do at least 30 or 40 pounds less just by pause benching. You can really focus on using that dead area where you don't have that much strength, and really push through that with the pause bench. Have that, you have, no leg drive, so legs up in the air to only target the chest. Make sure you isolate the movement. You have a bunch of like bench press variations that you can do that are so useful, especially when it comes to strength. So like I just said, you have eccentrics, you have paused, you have no legs, you have, like closed grip bench for your triceps. You have, I don't even know. There's so many of these small things that you can incorporate to actually get a little bit of a difference in your bench workout instead of just doing bench, the only thing. So variations, that's all I really need to say on it, and you guys can probably figure out some other variations, but the ones I told you are probably the best ones. Then the other thing that I gotta say is warm-ups. So another big reason why a lot of people don't end up hitting 315 is not because they can't get there, but because some stupid injury comes up, right? Someone, like every person I ask when they get into the gym, and they start lifting heavy, they start saying, "Oh, I could have hit 315, but my shoulder hurts so bad, or my chest hurts so bad, or like I ripped some muscle in my arm and I can't do that anymore." And I've heard this the most out of every single exercise. Like people who squat, maybe they say this as well, but generally they just don't want to squat heavy. People who deadlift, they deadlift, but they also have injuries as well. But bench, because bench is like the most common out of this three. Everyone has this shoulder injury or this wrist injury or this arm injury, that they can't it's hindering them from progressing. So that's why I stress the most important thing out of all of this is just having a warm-up band, like a little elastic band where you can use to warm up your shoulders. And you have to do this every time, because I remember when I first started lifting, one of my coaches would come up to me and she would be like, "Are you ready to bench?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so she would get her hand and just press it real hard, like just inside my shoulder. And if I flinched, it meant I didn't warm up hard enough or like good enough because my muscle was still tight in my shoulder. So you have to use that as a bit of a guide as well. And she was like, "If you keep on doing this, by the time you're 19, you're gonna be injured." And I was like, "Okay, that's what I'm gonna do now. I don't want to get injured by 19, and I'm gonna continuously warm up all the time, have all my warm ups dialed in, and also get my wrist to warm up as well. Used to play tennis, so that was already kind of warm, but use the rubber bands to help the wrist warm up a little bit, because especially when you start benching heavy, your wrist is gonna want to like concave a little bit, so you have to keep it nice and stretched out and tight. So that's another warm-up that I did a lot, wrist warm-ups for the bench, and then obviously the chest and the shoulders. The shoulders are very important though, because a lot of people don't do shoulder mobility because they don't do any overhead movements or like anything like that in their day-to-day lives. Like when you run and when you squat, you're kind of doing those day-to-day movements, but really like overhead stuff like this, like if you're an average person, you're not doing it as much. So prioritize those shoulder warm-ups and make sure they're really good to go, because you don't want to get injured and set yourself back and then not being able to hit future weights because of those injuries. So those are, I think, the main big tips when it comes to 315 and hitting it. Obviously, patience is huge, and then you can always look back at those other two videos that I talked to you guys about, and you can be like, "Oh, okay, well, I can use the variations from the other two compound lifts. I can use maybe like, I don't know, a change in workout structure. So every two months I switch from the leg day. I can also apply it to this, which you certainly can, and it works just the same. Like you can interchange these tips, and as long as they're mentally like somewhat applicable, you can use them, because they helped me so much throughout this time. And if I knew this stuff before and I just implemented it and stuck to it, man, I would have been able to bench a lot more. So hope this video was kind of helpful. Sorry for the change in scenery here, but we'll be back to the classic spot soon. But yeah, I just felt like I really needed to make this video talking about this stuff, because it takes a lot of work to get to these milestones, especially from a person who's under 180 pounds. just under. So like I'm at like 179 or something like that. So to be able to hit 315 at that weight is pretty impressive, and it certainly did take a lot of time. So this is just a video to try and get you guys to, get out there and put a little bit more weight on the bar, but doing it in a good way without hurting yourself. But at the same time, understanding that the only way you're going to grow is if you push yourself. So I'll leave you guys with that, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video.